When I got to get on the plane for China, my roommate told me, Alex, calm down. You think it's going to be a different civilization. You're going to go there. They're going to listen to the same music in America. They're going to wear jeans. They're going to be the same kind of people. And in a way, he was right. I got there and, but Shanghai is that way, right? Shanghai is kind of westernized. So it wasn't like such culture shock. When I went to India, I felt like the British who arrived there, I feel like 200 years ago, because you would go there and it's, oh my goodness, it's overwhelming, and you'd like die of malaria in like a few days, right? So like I got there and it was midnight, past midnight, right? And I walk out and it's similar when I first came to China. I thought I knew enough Chinese when I came to China, right? I spent like a few months learning. I got here and then was humbled. The same thing happened again. I had been learning Bengali for a few months. I got out there and I was just like, okay, like a taxi lagbe, like this is where I need to go. And it barely worked. We get in the taxi, we go. The door doesn't really close all the way. It's super dented and messed up. And as we're driving to Ramakrishna Mission, this hostel set up for scholars in Kolkata, I'm looking out the window and it's just, you mentioned like the traffic stuff, right? There's like broken glass on the street. There's all these like motorbikes just like going everywhere. I'm looking into these alleyways and there's just packs and packs of dogs kind of walking around. There are people like slums, like true slums in a way I've never seen anywhere. And not in America, we have homeless in America. There are kind of slum areas of Wuhan, but whole different level. And as we're going through these slums, we're the only car moving. And I was thinking, like, if this guy turns around, he could just like murk me. And like, I have a backpack full of cash. I have 10,000 RMB of cash in my backpack right now, right? This is a year of salary in Kolkata. Like.
All right. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Tea Soup, a podcast all about tea culture, life in modern China, and Chinese tea, and I guess Indian tea in this episode. I'm your host, Derek Poskin. I've been living in China since 2016. I've been drinking, buying, and selling Chinese tea for the past decade. So, pop on that kettle, heat up your teaware, and let's get this session started. Now, as you might have guessed from that intro, this is a very special episode and one that takes a look into a region famous for tea production for the past few hundred years. This is Darjeeling. Now, I'm joined in this episode with Alex, who recently took a 3-week tour of some old tea estates and some interesting cooperatives out on the border between India and Nepal. And as you heard in the intro, he recounts a lot of personal experiences arriving, navigating this new culture, and he gives some really cool, deep insights into the nature of the failing tea industry in Darjeeling. And this was part of a research project through his university here in China, with the ultimate goal of researching the state of the tea industry in northern India and publishing findings in a paper for the university. As you'll find out, they toured many estates all around Darjeeling, from Calcutta to the Nepali border, and Alex recounts meeting with the father of the moonlight white tea. This is a pretty distinguished Indian gentleman by the name of Raja Banerjee. And while we currently don't sell any Indian teas that are on the One River Tea website, there is a special cooperative that Alex talks about towards the end of this episode that we look forward to working with in the future. And if you got the sampler, that's the Fall Orthodox sampler and the freebies. And this is from a little small cooperative out in Sitong. And Alex will tell you kind of more details on that here soon. Now, before we get into this episode, for those Indian tea connoisseurs out there who are looking into tea and are getting excited about Indian teas and Darjeeling teas, we really highly recommend checking out Ketlee Teas. That's KETLEE.IN. That's their website. And we have a huge amount of respect for the main force behind the project. That's Susmit Pratik. And yeah, I think Alex mentioned that he saw some teas from the Okayti Estate on offer, which Alex says is one of the most legitimate of all the old estates he saw. And as you'll see in the episode, Alex talks about kind of just the sad state of the Indian tea estates in Darjeeling, how a lot of them are falling to the wayside through COVID, through strikes, through a lot of unsettling things that are really difficult for them to stay afloat, a lot of subsidies and stuff like that, and really it seems like it's becoming a little untenable. And so I we'll stop the introduction here and let Alex kind of tell you all his own personal experiences of his time out in Darjeeling. So please enjoy this nice episode, which is just a conversation between me and Alex, two member workers of the One River Tea Cooperative. So let's begin. I still did not get the Indian teas. You guys were supposed to send me some.
Yeah, I wonder what... Okay, so what you should get. I'm going to tell you what you're going to get. So there is Darjeeling tea from an actual growers cooperative we went to in Darjeeling. I say we, but I mean me. There is fake Darjeeling, which has been sent... So right now, if you go to Chengdu at the tea market, there is a ridiculous quantity of Nepali tea. Right now.
Oh, really?
Being sold as of this year, especially because they've been building more infrastructure. Now Nepali tea not only is flooding the market in Darjeeling, but also here in Sichuan, because it's cheaper. It's cheaper. So there's fake Darjeeling tea I bought from an online retailer in China off WeChat. I was like, oh, Darjeeling tea, cool. I wanted to try to see what people in China were drinking for Darj compared to what I had there. And it says on the box in I was like, what the hell? Like, why did you send me Nepali tea? He's like, don't you know? Darjeeling tea comes from Nepal now. If you don't like it, you send it back.
Interesting.
Screw you.
This is like the reverse of the tea horse road. It's like the wave is coming back.
Yeah. It truly is coming back. And there should also be a green tea, and it's really bad, but you need to try it. It's important you see what it's like.
Yeah, so you're sending me some green tea from India, some Darjeeling from India, and then some Nepalese tea?
Correct, that's right. In the Darjeeling Orthodox style.
Okay. Is it more orthodox than the stuff from Darjeeling?
Honestly, it's about the same. As we'll get into, that's kind of the problem. It's pretty much the same, and it's kind of over for Darjeeling just because they can make a similar quality of tea in Nepal. Like, someone from the tea board was telling me, like, they have almost the same soil profile, same elevation. I walked into Nepal. I'm sorry, Nepalese government, but it's an open border. You just cross the stream and you're in Nepal. So it's just like,
oh no.
It's open border. They have free trade. So like the trucks just come over and no one stops them.
Oh, really?
So there is no restriction between Nepal and India.
So for those just catching on, Alex spent how long in India this year?
3 weeks, I think. 3 weeks in January.
In India, and that was in January, and that was through your school, looking at the farmer cooperatives and the tea production in...
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And that was primarily in northern India. You mentioned the Nepalese border, right? Nepali border.
Yeah. I mean, I guess kind of to give like a picture, like an auditory picture in your mind, right? So everyone knows like the Ganges River, right? It's the famous one. It's sacred. Put the dead bodies in there. It gets yucky at the end. Later down the river, right? Like the lower reaches of it is Bengal, right? That's where the British set up their first big colony. And the top of Bengal, the hat of Bengal, where it reaches the Himalayan mountains, that's Darjeeling. Darjeeling means the land of thunder. So it's like it's the northern hills as you're approaching China. Everyone looks like Chinese there.
The foothills of the Himalayas.
That's right, yeah. So it's the foothills of the Himalayas, and even like the hills of the Himalayas. You can see China. You can see China from there.
You can walk into Nepal. Don't do it, but you can.
You could walk. You probably shouldn't do it, but you can walk into Nepal. I have violated the territorial sovereignty of Nepal, but they're comrades. They have a Maoist government for now. I'm worried about these protests, but the only communist revolution in the 21st century was in Nepal. That was successful.
Oh wow. So let's talk about India, because I think a lot of people are very interested in Indian teas, right? It's the iconic British tea. It's what a lot of people are exposed to. It's a lot of what people in China think that Westerners drink. It's just tea, black tea from India, right? But also, like, you weren't really looking into the black tea, right? You were a little more interested in some of the white stuff. So, so when tell us about this trip.
When I went there initially, right, I knew there was going to be this, university component. Okay, we'll get a publication in English, right? And there'll be a publication in Chinese. So right now, I guess to give background, in 2024, I think I sent you the data too. Hubei's tea export dropped by 44% in terms of value. So like the total export value of the tea leaving this province dropped. So right now...
That's 2024?
2024, that's right. So
because I just talked in the last episode about how difficult that year was for tea. Right, we saw a lot of things across the country last year going on. Even in Hunan, they were closing down Jiating Nongchangs. Remember that?
Correct.
They're taping off people's kilns. Like you can't make tea.
Yes, in Zhangjiajie, that's right. In Zhangjiajie, yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
And then as a result, the Hubei, I don't know if Hubei went through those measures, but then you see 42% you said?
44%, I think it was.
44% drop in the
value of export.
Ugh, that's incredible.
So they're trying to figure out, and it's an open-ended question, which hopefully we can help with. How do they make Chinese tea better fit the international consumer market, right? In terms of appearance, taste, and price. And something I was interested about going to India. I mean, I guess to give one little like further background here, Wu Juanong, like the father of like modern Chinese tea. This is the guy who, under the nationalist government in the 30s, established those first tea research sites in places like Wuishan, in places like Qimen. His students would go on to invent Dianhong down in Yunnan province.
Oh, wow.
Also, the beloved like metal pressing of pu'er tea cakes, extra like tight, that started in the 30s and 40s. Like, so this is
nice.
That first generation of like Chinese tea modernizers in a similar dilemma, right? It's 1930s China, and Chinese tea is struggling on the international market. India is decimating them. Indonesia is decimating them. Kenya is decimating them. The Soviet Union was producing tea in Georgia. So like across the board, like Chinese tea is in trouble. They're losing their export value, and Wu Juanong goes abroad. He goes to Darjeeling. He goes to Indonesia, he goes to Japan, he goes to all these different countries and tries to figure out how can we update Chinese tea to better meet the international market. And one of the places he goes to, is Kolkata. He comes to India, right? He comes to the same Red Bazaar, a lot of the same places that we would go on this trip. He meets the Tea Institute, Toklai, which is still there now, 100 years later, and tries to figure out, okay, how can we update Chinese tea? So like, I guess like going into India, I was thinking about like, all right, 90 years ago, in a similar situation, Chinese tea experts were trying to go abroad and figure out what could they learn from India. And
so
now,
it's like, if it worked once,
India could only be understood as a cautionary tale. The situation...
Interesting. You're still recording. There's probably some lag there.
Hello?
Hello?
Did it just cut out? Can you hear me?
Let's see.
Well, in the other tab a moment ago, I see it is currently uploading while the recording. So the recording is all still there. So we'll just continue. Okay.
I was gonna say, as long as you don't close the tab over the browser, it should be fine. Then we could just edit these together.
Yeah, it does seem sort of slower. Keep talking though. You sounded kind of glitchy a second ago.
Yeah. So I'm just saying we can piece these two together.
I want to see. Maybe let me switch to a different internet. Hold on. Just see. Hello. Can you hear me? Switch to Wi-Fi. I think it might be better. Is this
Wi-Fi?
I'm on Wi-Fi now. Yeah. Just because. Yeah, it was kind of it sounded kind of mechanical a second ago. Okay.
Yeah. So usually it records at a higher quality than you can see.
Okay. All right. And we'll continue. Okay. So like Indian tea now, I don't think it should only be understood to the Chinese as like a cautionary tale because at least in West Bengal, the situation is no better. In fact, the situation is much, much worse.
Much worse than what?
Than here in Hubei or in other. Okay. So right now there is this decline, right, in export value in China, and there is this hardship in the Chinese tea market. But the hardship in Darjeeling is much, much more severe. Of the 87 Darjeeling tea estates, 13 have completely stopped production. 0 are profitable. So they're all in deep trouble right now. And we'll get into that more in a second. But when these Chinese tea experts had last come to India in the 1930s, they came to Kolkata because Calcutta was the tea city. It was the city which the British had set up their really first stronghold in India. It was in Bengal, which is like the plains between Calcutta and Darjeeling, where they historically were growing indigo. They were growing jute, and like the British Raj was like consolidating and making all this crazy money. And then come the 1850s, tea. They couldn't grow tea in the same lands on the plains where they were growing jute and indigo, but they found all of this empty or mostly empty land in Darjeeling. The British cleared out the native inhabitants, the Lepcha people, with some help from the Nepali Gorkha army. And the promise was, if you clear out this land, you will be given a space to grow a garden, and we're going to build these tea estates, and you can come help work on the tea estates, and it's going to be great.
No.
So
I see where this is going.
Yeah, so the Gorkha army comes in, the Nepali come in, and in the higher hills, it's the Nepalis, and the lower hills, it's these tribes people. And these tribes people, they are of the Indian subcontinent, but they're not Indian as we would think of like Indian culture, right? They don't have the same background with Hinduism or the caste structure. They're people, even more ancient people, Indian, but even like, like Sentinel Island? You heard of North Sentinel Island in India? So there's that island off the coast of India, south of Calcutta, a few hundred miles, where there's a completely uncontacted tribe. And whenever people try to go onto the island, they just get murked, right? With like the bows and arrows. So they've been there for like hundreds, maybe 100,000 years, 60,000 years. And they're older than the population as we think of now on the Indian subcontinent. Okay, so people who are some mixture of those original groups and later Indian peoples. Those people from the hills and from the forests would then go on to be the labor population at the lower elevation plantations in Darjeeling.
So this is where the Britain had that army of these kind of not quite Indian peoples from Nepal, and between Nepal and Darjeeling and stuff, clear out the Darjeeling hills, and then said, "Oh, we'll give you work, we'll give you places to live."
Yeah, that's right. And there's different versions of the story. We're talking to different people there, right? That the ethnic.
And so, hang on. So this information you're getting, is it primary source material essentially from
this
people?
Is primary source. That's right. That's right.
In the Darjeeling hills and stuff. Okay.
That's
excellent.
Correct. So
go on. Tell us what they were saying.
Yeah. So if you ask the displaced minority, the Lepcha, right? That's the story they're going to give, right? We were displaced by the Nepali. Right now, we're living in the midst of a Gorkha land independence movement. And this really figures in heavily to the tea story, because that, in part, is why Nepali tea has now really come to the foreground. In 2017, the Nepali majority of the Darjeeling Hill area is still formally part of Bengal, the state of Bengal, which speaks the Bengali language. It's centered in Kolkata, hundreds and hundreds of miles away. Now you have Nepali people, functionally Nepali people speaking Nepali language or Hindi, and they want independence because they are a huge revenue source for Bengal. Tea is the number one employer. Tea is the number one tax revenue by industry there, right? Tea makes so much money for Bengal. And tourism. Every Bengali person who can, and when we were there in January in the pleasant season, puts on what they call their monkey cap, which is this like big hat. It's like a balaclava, right? With like a little face thing, right? But it kind of sticks up more. I don't know why they call it a monkey cap. They all go there for tourism, right? They have their barbecues. They go for their mountain homestays. Like, this is a huge moneymaker for Bengal. But the people who live there are not represented so well in Kolkata, right? So they want independence. In 2017, all the Nepalis strike. Every single tea estate is shut down for 100 days. But the auction houses in Kolkata, the spice must flow. They still need their tea. Right? And if we're not going to get it here, we're going to cross the border into Nepal and we're going to get the tea. And they did. And as soon as the auction houses, because the auction houses, they don't, any business, right? You want to make the same kind of like routine transactions year after year. It's easy, right? There's a transaction cost to go out there and find something new. So they never bothered. Now they've been pushed to do so. They made those connections. And Nepali tea, grown in a situation with similar soil, similar elevation.
Almost, yeah.
Newer tea bushes. The tea bushes in Darjeeling, which they call China bush, by the way, were brought there 150 years ago. And whoever the boss happens to be of the estate, which changes every 5, 10, 20 years, they don't bother really updating the tree stock, right? They're there to make their money now and then sell off the business. It's just an asset, right? They live far away. So these China bushes, which have been grown now for more than 150, of course, they're not going to produce the same volume of yield as a bush planted 20 or 30 years ago in Nepal. So
this is an interesting counterpoint to what a lot of the people who buy tea from us are interested in, right? We're interested in old trees. We're interested in Gushu, Laocong, like older bushes. The older the bushes, the better. But when you take it out of that context and put it into a plantation context, into an asset for a businessman,
Sure.
older bushes mean lower yield, right? Older bushes are not as good as the younger bushes that can produce twice as much.
Yeah,
So-
and that's you got it. You got it. It's a whole different, like, now the government is like trying their best to convince these planters to reproduce, to tear up, to uproot, and then replant 2%
Oh no.
per year. They're trying their best to make it happen.
See that it always everyone cringes, like all the real tea drinkers cringe
Sure,
when they
yeah.
hear stuff like
That's
that.
right.
Where it's just like, oh, you have an incentive to pull up your old bushes and plant new bushes because you'll have a higher yield. Anyways, you can't
But here's
can't
the
change
thing:
it.
will you? That's the whole like
Ooh.
point we discovered when we were there. Is like these new hybrid cultivars. It's a hybrid of the China bush, the small leaf cultivars, and what they call asameka, right? Darjeeling in China, what they grow in like Yunnan. So they're hybrid cultivars of these two. And the problem with these hybrids is they do produce a better yield until they die in mass. They're much more finicky. They're all grown from clone, not from seed. And in a situation where you are non-stop picking from February to November, that's a huge strain on the bushes, which can only be maintained by, when we were there, they were just putting the urea in the rows, right, in January. You need to
The
constantly...
fertilizer.
Yeah, that's right. You need to up the nitrogen content consistently year-round. And now, the same drought which hit Yunnan,
Oh, right.
which hit Ensha, hit Bengal 10 times harder.
Yeah, I remember that the temperatures in India were insane over the summer, like 42 degrees Celsius, like over that, like consistently.
And like optimal tea growth, this one manager was telling me, it should be about anything above 30 degrees Celsius, you're in trouble. And they were well above
really?
that consistently. And there was
For
this
most
one,
of the year, like
botanist I spoke to in Darjeeling who was saying like there was no dormancy period this year. The whole reason, in November you have to stop picking is because you want to give the bush a few months kind of recharge and get ready for spring. Didn't happen in 2024. It's not happening this year. There's fresh leaves on the bush. And last year in 2024, what happened was the bush freaked out. When April came, it felt like it didn't have enough energy to keep, growing new leaves. And it started sending starch and sugars down to the roots as if it was in dormancy. So it was the middle of spring, but it's
That's
like having
up.
like a freaked out, like panic attack in April.
Hormonal crisis, yeah.
A hormonal crisis, if you will, in April and May at peak picking seasons.
Jeez.
Yeah, so kind of like, so let's wind up. Let's go back to Kolkata, right? I arrive in Kolkata on January 7th, and it's, do you remember when you first came to China? What were your first feelings, your first moments in this country? How did you feel?
In this country, definitely overwhelmed. Definitely just like there are people everywhere. There are e-bikes everywhere. I don't understand any of the rules for people driving. How is nobody getting hit by cars? Like, it's just way too dense, way too noisy. And yeah, I remember just looking across the street at just like a sea of e-bikes parked in front of like a Walmart. And I'm like, how does anyone park there, get their e-bike out? Like, yeah, anyways, definitely overwhelming.
I think overwhelming, but like when I got to get on the plane for China, my roommate told me, Alex, calm down. You think it's going to be a different civilization. You're going to go there. They're going to listen to the same music in America. They're going to wear jeans. They're going to be the same kind of people. And in a way, he was right. I got there and, but Shanghai is that way, right? Shanghai is kind of westernized. So it wasn't like such culture shock. When I went to India, I felt like the British who arrived there, I feel like 200 years ago, because like, you would go there and it's, oh my goodness, it's overwhelming, and you'd like die of malaria in like a few days, right? So like I got there and it was midnight, past midnight, right? And I walk out and it's similar when I first came to China. I thought I knew enough Chinese when I came to China, right? I spent like a few months learning. I got here and then was humbled. The same thing happened again. I had been learning Bengali for a few months. I got out there and I was just like, okay, like a taxi lagbe, like this is where I need to go. And it barely worked. We get in the taxi, we go. The door doesn't really close all the way. It's super dented and messed up. And as we're driving to Ramakrishna Mission, hostel set up for scholars in Kolkata. I'm looking out the window, and it's just, you mentioned like the traffic stuff, right? There's like broken glass on the street. There's all these like motorbikes just like going everywhere. I'm looking into these alleyways, and there's just packs and packs of dogs kind of walking around. There are people, like slums, like true slums in a way I've never seen anywhere. And not in America, we have homeless in America. There are kind of slum areas of Wuhan, but whole different level. And as we're going through these slums, we're the only car moving. And I was thinking, like, if this guy turns around, he could just like murk me. And like, I have a backpack full of cash. I have like 10,000 RMB of cash in my backpack right now, right? This is a year of salary in Kolkata. Like, he could just like he could just take it. And then as he's driving, he's Googling in English in his phone, best gynecologist Kolkata. And he's just like scrolling through, and he's, eye on the road, and then he'll like go back to scrolling. He's like, this is a man, a fellow, so maybe for his wife or something. And I remember I asked him in Bengali, it's just like, Tumi ki poi lage, like, do you feel scared? And then he's just like, no, I'm not afraid. It's fine. Everything's fine. He's just like, again, Googling best gynecologist on his phone and speed up taxi. And then we finally get there, and there are guards at the door. Which there's Baoan in China, right? But this is a proper armed guard standing at the door, at the gate. Like, who are you? You have to sign everything in with like pencil. It's like, you have reservation. I called in advance. Okay, yes, here you are. Kolkata University has vouched for you. I'll take you to your room. And I get to the room, and there's a meal waiting for me. No internet. I have no cell reception. I paid for as it turned out, I was not swindled. The phone card did work, but it didn't work everywhere. It's like 2005, right? Where you have signal in some parts of the city and then no signal in some parts of the city. So we're in a no signal part of town. No Wi-Fi.
What was the meal?
The meal was lentil. It was vegetarian. So it was vegetarian meal of like lentil. It was a little curry with eggplant, and then a rosgula, like a little sweetened dairy ball, a little ball of like sugar and sweet dairy stuff, and then rice.
Sounds nice.
It was, and I drank the water, and then there's a jug of water on the desk. I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and my colleague Giacomo had come over. He'd been there the night before. He'd come to the room and was like, "You drank the water? Oh my God, you are going to die! This is terrible! What a stupid thing you have done! You must pray to the God or whatever." And then I was like,
"No,
this is it.
Am I getting malaria? Yeah,
I'm gonna get the malaria. I'm gonna die. This is it. It's over." And I was fine. And so this was the beginning of many times eating and drinking things in India and being like, that doesn't look the most fresh,
too much?
But then being okay. No, I mean, it could be like, I'm a naturally yucky person. So I think I have like a natural immunity to like yuckiness.
That's an optimistic way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it doesn't really like, there's like filth doesn't really like bother me, right? Like I remember I used to working in a retirement home. That's a yucky job. There's a lot of you have to clean a lot of things. You want to put your hands into a lot of things you don't want to put your hands into in like bathrooms, right, in a retirement home. And it's okay. The point being, Indian food was good. I did not get sick, as people were warning me on the Discord. Thank you, friends. So I went in super like kind of like on the defense, right? Like I was ready to be robbed. I was ready to get malaria, and then bad things just kept not happening. It was chaos.
I love
not
bad
happening.
Things kept not happening. It's such a India. Yeah. Bad things kept not happening.
Yeah, no, it was because it was the first time in a long time I felt like I'm in a situation where I feel
out of your comfort zone,
out of my comfort zone. Like I feel so comfortable in China.
Right,
even so
kind
of comfortable back home, but like in America. But here, this was like, okay, what's gonna happen, right? Yeah, it was. So we're in Kolkata. And we're trying to find this white tea, or I'm really trying to find some white tea, because I had heard people on the Discord and on Reddit kept talking about they love white tea from Darjeeling. They want some good Darjeeling white. And went to a few places and kind of got the usual mythology. It's picked only by moonlight, by virgins. My aunt's cancer was cured by it. I met a guy in line who was buying some white tea and some blue tea. Like some flowered blue tea. It's like some sort of flower. And he's like, his doctor prescribed it for his eyes. So like there is like a medicinal belief, or there is like a expectation for like medicinal properties, which, I'm sure maybe it helps somehow. But more so than I would expect a Western consumer to believe, or at least like a real someone who's going to spend 10 times the normal price for normal tea. Typically, the most boutique customers in the West are not interested in health claims, right? That's more so like more casual drinkers. So anyways, at these tea shops, hearing like the first mythologies about white tea, get some, and it's like okay. It's like it's just like a rougher kind of like gongmei, a little bit sour. It was
what
yeah.
the leaves look like?
Broken. So broken.
Like,
there was a lot green? Of bud. It was recognizably a white tea. It was a white tea. It was like there was like the white needles and like the darker leaves. It was not quite green. No, it wasn't like a green baimudan. It was like kind of it did not look wonderful. But
and you've
had
some of the Yunnan white teas, right? Like the forbidden fruit. Do you remember what that one tastes like?
Yeah, so it's in the same universe, and we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Okay.
I met the man who invented Yueguang Bai Cha. Yunnan stole it. I met the man who claims to have invented it. It was stolen. Okay, so we'll get to him in a moment.
We'll get there. I'm just trying to break down the white tea you found as far as like what the people listening would imagine it to be.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I would say imagine it then as like a Yunnan kind of white tea, as like a moonlight white. I think probably is where I'd place it.
So just like a lower quality, inferior moonlight white, broken leaves.
Yeah, that's right. And then, so we're there in Kolkata. Great. Talking to the tea board in Kolkata, a very impressive building. If you go in downtown Kolkata, it has this wonderful, I've never seen a building devoted to tea being so large and impressive. And you get in there.
Really?
And it's empty. The guy tells me like there were 700 people working there in 2000. Now there's like 87. So like it's ghost town.
5 years.
Well, no, it may have been 10 years. I think he got there in 2000 something. But the building is like emptied out. So the tea industry is in trouble. We're at the tea board, sit down. I asked about white tea, and he's just like, the average Indian has never even heard of white tea, right? And if you tried to serve them white tea or green tea, they would not be happy about it, right? One of the PhD students who was there like showed me a meme where it's like, if you invite me to your house for tea and it's not milk tea, I'm not coming. I didn't get why it was funny.
Meme. Yeah,
Indian meme. It didn't quite hit for me, but like I get the important content. Okay, if it's not milk tea, don't invite me. Right? Bengalis love tea. There's tea shops up and down like every road, and they're drinking tea all day, every day, in very small cups. Cups maybe half the size of this, often made of clay. For single use, you drink it and you smash it on the ground. Right? 25 rupee. Yeah.
So it's like, is it like rough fired clay?
That's exactly right.
That's exactly right. So they pour, this is masala chai, is that right? Like when you say milk
Correct.
tea. Okay.
That's right.
The pull the chai into this small little cup, you drink it, and then you just crush the cup. Throw it on the ground.
Yep.
But it's clay, and so it's not necessarily litter. I don't know. It's like it still seems bizarre in my mind, but
yeah, there's like a mound of cups. You'll see it. All these like tea stands around the city.
They powder them back down or something. Yeah.
I've wondered that. Like, I'm talking to people there in Kolkata. This one girl was saying she loves to kind of, because it's so rough, use her teeth to kind of grind a little bit of the clay into her mouth as she's drinking the tea. So she wants that clay taste. She likes because they like the taste of the clay with their tea.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this one style I saw there, like they call it tandoori, like where they will heat the cup. Maybe you've seen this before. They'll heat the cup up, right?
Yeah.
They'll blowtorch it until it's like red hot, basically, and then they'll dump that into a pot of tea, and then they pull it out and then that way, like some of the clay in the tea truly infuses, right, and it gives it this nice burnt sugary taste. So that's
a cool culture, yeah.
They're a hardcore tea culture. They drink it all day, every day. Yeah, typically it's in the form of milk tea. However, the elite, and only the elite in Bengal, drink what they call liquor tea. What would you guess liquor tea is? What is the liquor tea?
Tea. Yeah, I think I would say distilled tea. Like tea and liquor, like, yeah.
It's tea where the soup is clear. It's tea without milk and sugar. It's tea from
it's our
holy
tea.
Fred tea. It's our tea. We would understand. Yeah, that's what they call the liquor tea. And there was this one guy who mentioned he went to a meeting in Delhi and got in trouble because he asked one of the servants standing around, like, "Excuse me, boy, come over here. I want liquor tea." And he went out and was just and thought that the official was trying to order like alcohol in his tea. And the official gets called out and like reprimanded. And he's like, no, ask any Bengali and they'll tell you what liquor tea is. Indeed, like, yeah, I'm sure someone called it Bengali and it was all right. So liquor tea is, so the elite there,
hilarious.
they do drink, you saw the clipped red tea in Fujian, right? The clipped red tea.
Yep.
So
For
imagine
like the
like
tea
a
bags.
clipped. Yeah. So like not quite so fine, but like a
Powderized,
relatively, kind of clipped, kind of whole red leaf tea. That's what they call orthodox tea. That is what is prized in Bengal and is only grown in the hills of Darjeeling using the China bush. So it's a relatively whole leaf red tea, really light oxidization, really light kneading. So the liquor color of it is very, very subdued. It is not at all what you think of as like or I would think of as like an Indian CTC, like the crushed hair curl, kind of like powderized tea in the tea bag. This is a very light orange, yellow color tea. And that's what they prize there. So yeah, those are the two kinds of tea people in Kolkata drink. Everybody knows Darjeeling, very hyped to be going out there. So it's me, it's Giacomo, it's this professor, and then it's the sweetest boy. Shout out to Habu, this Brahmin, about 30-year-old Habu, really sweet boy, big sweet boy. I have a picture of him looking at some green tea during a power outage in Darjeeling, like the candlelight, and a really sweet boy. Anyway, so we get up there, and the first person I remember meeting is the Raja, is the inventor of white tea. Raja is like the king, right? Raja Banerjee, and he is like the last true Anglo-Bengali. He's a Bengali ethnically, but he went to school in Cambridge, son, and he went to school in Britain. I may have been London School of Economics. One of those big, went to university in England. He had a pair of match shotguns. He loves wine and whiskey, and has his vacation at the ocean. And like he talks like a madman, like a crazy British. Because he is. A certain political economy produces this personality of someone who was born to like the fourth generation of an estate owner and then goes to university abroad and goes to parties. Like, he has a big personality. And he invented moonlight white tea based on a journal entry from his grandfather in the 1930s. While he was on vacation at the ocean, he finally understood the meaning of this diary entry where his father said, well, after a full moon, you tended to get a better harvest. And he suddenly realized what this meant. He like left his family, I guess, in the story, like at the ocean, and then goes all the way back to Darjeeling. And when he's up there, he calls all like the workers, like, okay, we're gonna pick tea now. And the hours, he's very safe because historically the myth was they're picking it by moonlight. I think now he knows there's scrutiny of that, and he says, well, in the early morning after the moonlight, we have a special like 1 or 2 day harvest of it. His white tea, way better. In his defense,
really,
it's like silver needle tea. Like he has made silver needle tea. So he's a tea like sommelier. He's been around the world, teaches classes. He does love tea, and he makes, Raja, if you're hearing this, he makes a fine white tea. But again, he claims he invented moonlight white tea in the 90s. So this would have been, just around the time people in Yunnan started to think about it.
It does kind of check out.
So time-wise, it checks out. Anyway, but he claims that he is the inventor of it. And it was weird. Go on.
Inventor as even like the naming. Like in Indian, it's still like, in the language, it's still moonlight white.
Moonlight white. That's exactly right.
Okay.
And then he recently changed the name to like silver. For his tea, he's calling it silver tips, or imperial silver tips is what he's calling it now, instead of silver needle. And he has a protege who has started making baimudan, called baimudan, learning it from China. So yeah, so he really likes his tea. He's serious about tea. But he's also like, have you heard of biodynamics? Biodynamic agriculture?
Yeah.
He's really into that.
Really into biodynamics.
Yeah, so like, but he's doing it. Like they are grinding up, the cow horns. They are burying it. Like he ran his estate. Okay, I'm sorry, Raja, but like I talked to the manager who was there afterwards. They were deep trouble. Like they were behind on paying the workers. They were in trouble at this estate, Makabari, the first tea estate, or claims to be one of the first tea estates in Darjeeling. It's the estate which Raja inherited, and now he's kind of doing his own thing, and he sold his tea estate to this company. And the guy who's taking it over now tells me they've been doing organic kind of as Raja basically started to think about in the 70s, and the 5 years he's been there, they've been operating at a huge loss. Like hundreds and hundreds of RMB per kg above the wholesale price is what their cost of production is. So they are losing money with every single kilogram. And when I went down to the shed, They have all the concoctions, right? By the way, biodynamic agriculture is like a early imagining of organic agriculture based on like homeopathic movement in the 1920s and 30s. So they spray quartz crystals with water at like some crazy dilution at an hour in the morning. They bury these cow horns underground for a certain duration of time, and then they will take that and spray that with a certain homeopathic dilution on the roots every once in a while. Valerian flowers, like all kinds of crazy, different stuff. And it's not working. Objectively, it is not working. I don't know anything about the biodynamic movement, like more broadly. Maybe you've encountered that. It's like a hippie thing, right? I think in the West still.
Yeah, no. So, and what I was thinking though, like the guy I know that does it is more into permaculture, and so his practices are very sound. But he really does do the concoctions and does like the distillations of certain things. And it's like, oh, I'll just add a few drops of this valerian extraction to the soil here, and I'm like, a few drops, like he's got literally the eyedropper. I'm like, okay, like if that works, like, but his garden does look beautiful. But I really think it is more the permaculture aspects of it that are really working for him, like the proper berming and goats and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like the biggest thing with Raja, this is someone who really he's passionate about the biodynamics, right? He had a revelation one day when he was riding in the bush on his horse and he fell off, and he decided he wants to really go hard on nature. And I think he's genuine. He genuinely does like believe that.
And where is he? He was in Darjeeling.
He is in Darjeeling. We met him at his like house in Siliguri, and which is the market town south of Darjeeling where the tea comes to wholesale. So we met him at his home there before ultimately going to the estate himself. And like to his credit, like he let us go there and talk to the people in charge now, and ask questions and get a real sense of what's beyond just like his narrative, right? Like one thing I think was nice is he asked for like, come back and like, give me a real report of what's going on, right? give me and yeah, so like my real feelings are like, okay, it's not working here. I think maybe not because biodynamics is, necessarily correct or incorrect. Although, I'm skeptical about the crystals whenever I hear crystals, especially crystals in a homeopathic dilution of like whatever, 1,000 to 1. I think ultimately because he did not build the relationship with the workers on the tea factory estate that he thought he did. Like if you go to this factory, you come in to this factory, he has pictures of all the smiling farmers on the factory like wall, and he has all these wonderful portraits that artists have come when they've come here to like draw the nature of it and the community. He never calls them workers. He calls them, these are my community members, right?
Oof.
But no, I think he is genuine in that, but he never was able to really convince them of these principles being feasible. And although, like here, we were walking through this like shed, and this is all their perspective, right? And he, of course, like this guy has probably given the tour to foreigners like 100 times, right?
Yeah.
And as he's taking the other people up the hill, I walk into the field, 10 yards, and there's a giant trash pile in the middle of the fields, right? This biodynamically managed a tea estate, allegedly. So like clearly for the people who are working there, it's not something they genuinely believe in. I don't think.
Well, I mean, we have the first-hand experience with Mayan Thai, right? With
sure.
our local villagers that our community members that we work with.
The community
and it's
members.
I mean, it's like we're constantly trying to convince them. That like there is promise for organics. There is something better we can do if we just don't throw all of our trash in the ravine, stuff like that.
A place where I saw that actually work was another cooperative in Darjeeling, set up. Again, Raja is a Bengali talking to ultimately Nepalis who live there, right? And these divides are as cultural as they are racial, as they are class, right? Everywhere we went, every single manager was either Bengali or Assamese. Every single owner was Indian, but not Nepali. Very infrequently.
Workers were all Nepali.
That's right. So there really is this divide there.
That is very different, yeah.
And, I think Raja is someone who has to spend a lot of time talking to foreign customers, and he got very good at that, and he still does a good job, I think. marketing. He has his own independent brand now. But ultimately, I don't think that the approach he was doing was really going to work, where it's like, oh, we're going to have a meeting, and frequently, and like, I'm going to tell you that this is the, I have it, I've got it, this is the way to do it. I've gone abroad, I've gone to London, and I've seen the way to make organic, and now you're going to do organic. And, that kind of grand stuff doesn't typically work, or however he communicated it, it was not successful, right? This is good for nature, and this is gonna whatever it was. This is good for the. He did not speak to their interests directly, and he did not demonstrate. He did not demonstrate to them, I think, through action. Right? All these words and meetings and whatever, it doesn't really work. Where I did see things working was Sitong. So
where's Sitong?
So imagine we are in Darjeeling, right?
Market. So let's go from the market town south of Darjeeling into Raj's estates in the foothills.
That's right. And then on the other side, so he's facing like south, right? He's facing like down towards Kolkata. On the other side of the mountain range, facing the Himalayas, nearer to Nepal, nearer to China, is Sitong. And in this village, there was a local ethnically Nepali Indian guy who had been to Nepal in the early 2000s. Nepal has its revolution from 1996 to 2006. Nepal goes through civil war. Ultimately, they overthrow the king and they set up a new government. And part of that is cooperatives. They want to have a cooperative inspired by China. They want to have a cooperativization of the countryside in Nepal. It never really takes off, by the way. But in Elam, which is the border county between bordering Darjeeling, they do get these tea cooperatives off the ground. And this guy had gone over, he had seen it, and he tries to convince his neighbors, and at first it doesn't work. But he does it just himself as a household once. As one household, I'm going to grow tea, I'm going to make tea, and he successfully does it. He's able to do it organically, to do it, to try to make this handmade tea, which, by the way, some of it's strange. Some of it's pretty good, some of it's pretty strange. And he makes it work. He gives them proof of concept, right? Here I'm doing it, and I made money. I made this much money this year. That's ideal. And they see him every day, every week, not just you riding in on horseback every now and again, right? With foreign guests, explaining to thousands of foreign guests, this is the great model, whatever. Actually, just like here he is in the community, he just does it. He did it. And then one household becomes 2, becomes 5, becomes 50. And then showing, hey, this is how I'm doing it. This is a co-op you can join. You can learn all the skills you need to make the tea, all the skills you need to grow the tea. We're gonna do this together. Not only am I going to tell you, I'm going to show you. And and that has worked. So there is this one hopeful new tea growers association I saw. I think historically they were growing black pepper, and now they're growing tea. And it's
where's this guy from? Is he Nepali?
So he's local. So he's a local guy, ethnically Nepali.
Wow.
That's right.
Excellent.
I think
so that's
so it's a mix of like the Nepali and the Lepcha people, which are the OG indigenous people.
The tribals,
Tribal, right? So
there are cleared out the hills.
So you have those like Lepchas and Nepalis in this village working together. Yeah, they've made this pretty, I would say, in all of my years, the most successful tea cooperative I've ever seen, because it really is democratically being managed. All the people came together and they had the meeting and they talked and bickered and laughed and joked, and so it's.
Did we end up getting any of their tea?
Yes. So if you got the freebie, if you got the survey freebie, you will try some of their fall orthodox. They were basically out, right? So they're doing well. They're making their tea and they're selling it.
That's great. I would love to they sold out of their teas.
That's right. Yeah. So they only have, but again, the understanding of tea there is it's so different. Like I was trying some of his orthodox tea, and he's worried, like, maybe it's not brewing up right. So he reaches his hand into the bag and he kind of crumples it a little bit and then puts it in the cup for you, right? Just to make sure, because you want cuppage. They love their cuppage. They want things to brew quickly into the cup, right? You want it to really get all that good stuff in the tea into the liquor as quickly as possible.
So this is like the crushing of the chowder.
It's like, I got let me help you with that, right? It's great. Try it. So that's two very different situations between Sitong and then Raja's, now floundering tea estate. So
Sitong is the place. If we do carry Darjeeling teas, it'll probably come from Sitong.
That's right. Cool. Probably so. Yeah. And again, the tea's pretty good. They make a cannonball tea. I think it's inspired, but I think they saw on YouTube.
Gunpowder green tea.
I think they saw a Dragon Ball, like a Longju, like on YouTube, and they're like, I can do that. And they rolled it by hand. It's like a hand rolled little ball.
That's what the Longjus used to be, yeah. Traditional long teas are hand rolled.
Yep. So he's like, I can do that. So he has the cannonball tea, and it is pungent. He makes yellow tea. He saw a YouTube video of someone making yellow tea, and it just tastes like shangpu, right? That's kind of what happens to the teas out here.
This guy.
So yeah, and then it's the only place I've been where like he has an 18-year-old son, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get into tea. I'm doing tea. Like it's socially sustainable. Like there's a next generation who's excited about it and getting into it. Whereas at the old school tea estates set up by the British, everyone I talked to was like, no one born after 1990 wants to stay. And they're always blaming, if you ask them why, they'll always point at their phone and say this phone has ruined the local people, right? The phone, now people see they see the job opportunities elsewhere, right? For the first time ever, they have the ability and some modicum of literacy to get out of the situation. And if they can, they're not going to be tea pickers. So that's kind of the dichotomy there of like Sitong, these new independent tea growers versus these older tea estates, which are probably like or anyone's imagination of tea in India would be these awful estates set up in the 1800s.
Huge estates. And you said you had a number earlier that was like there used to be 72 of them, and now there are only 18.
So there's 87 of them who are official.
87.
They have and of the official 87, 12 or 13 are like completely not functioning right now. Like we drove by one where all the workers are standing outside and like demanding an explanation, really? Right? So it's not happening. We drove by another one that was like UN FAO organic model estate, completely closed, like shut down. I mentioned earlier the 2017 Gorkhaland movement, right? The people who are there, ethnically Nepali, they want an independent province separate from Bengal. They shut down every tea estate for 100 days in 2017, and that causes more people to now start sourcing from Nepal. But also, for clever people, if you're a tea estate owner and your workers aren't working, maybe you just buy tea from elsewhere. And maybe you just become like a Chinese factory, right? Where you're a factory and you're just kind of buying tea from wherever. And that starts to happen. Like there was an honest comrade on the inside, if you will not be named, a member of the Communist Party of India who's a manager at a tea factory. And he was saying now like maybe 2/3 of their tea they're buying from offsite. Right, they're buying from these other.
Are you meaning when they're buying offsite, are they buying the finished tea or the fresh leaves?
Fresh leaf. That's important. But they call green leaf. Yep. Green leaf. The fresh leaf. They're buying from offsite. So the actual estates themselves, they're kind of losing their purpose because the independent farmers, although they may not give you the best price, they're gonna do their best to make sure that they're growing it right. Right. They're mostly all established in the last 20, 30 years. It's newer tree stock, better yield. And also, they don't come under all the same regulation. The old school tea estates is a certain picking time. You only can pick between these dates. You can only ever convert 15% of your land to anything but tea. You have regulated wages. You have all these inspections you have to go under. You can only use pesticides at certain times in certain ways. But if you're an independent farmer, you're kind of off the grid, right? Whatever happens between you and the leaf before it gets to the factory floor, it's kind of unregulated. Okay. So they aren't operating under any sort of the same kind of like government restraints. So these independent farmers, they're killing it, and they're as Darjeeling over the past couple of years, like it's fallen from I think it was like 12 or 14. Oh, it's always confusing because they use lakh, like 100,000. Like in Chinese, they use yuan for 10,000, right? They're always stuck on lakhs, but I think it comes to, correct me if I'm wrong, internet, like either 14 or 1.4 million tons of tea that were produced in Darjeeling has dropped either to 5 million or 0.5 million over the last couple of years. So since the Gorkhaland movement, right? Interruption in production. Then COVID hits, right? COVID hits. Yeah. You're a workplace. You're not a farm. You're a workplace. And guess what? Workplace restrictions. So production stops for a few more years, right? And all these interruptions in production, all the buyers at the auction houses in Kolkata, they aren't going to wait. And now in Siliguri, in this market town, it is these Jain traders. You know Jainism?
Yeah. The Jains are the very nonviolent ones, right?
Yes, you got it. The very nonviolent, very vegetarian.
They sweep the ground before them so they don't step on insects.
Well, they're also in the local area notorious, like almost like gangster traders. So they have a network of Jain traders there who now they're buying tea from Kenya and they're and they're sending it to Siliguri, and they're mixing it, or they're buying tea from Nepal because it's cheaper, and they're mixing it. They're mixing it. So not only is the green tea going into the estates, not necessarily from the estate, now what actually is going from Siliguri to Darjeeling or to other cities is mixed. They're mixing this tea, right? So with this like mixing of tea now, like what is Darjeeling, right? One of the it's a production style. At the end of the day, it's a production style, right? People who want Darjeeling Orthodox, they probably want that less oxidized, small leaf, to quote China Bush. That's what they probably want, right? But now it's like been so adulterated. Like the tea board says probably only 1/8 of what's marketed as Darjeeling internationally is from Darjeeling proper and is actually Darjeeling leaf. Raja says maybe 1%. So
really?
You're probably not drinking tea from a Darjeeling estate, labeled at Darjeeling estate, unless you're buying from a few people, like Okayti.
I mean, I guess
probably Yankee tea, probably. But anyways, go on.
I mean, I would guess that's probably very similar to the Dragon Well.
Yeah.
The demand for Dragon Well green tea is absolutely enormous, but the true production region can only meet less than 2% of that. Right. And so it's impossible to say like, this much of tea is from, it's like it all comes from outside. But at the same time, like you said, at the end of the day, it is a production style. It is one cultivar made in a specific way. Okay. You don't need that to come necessarily from Darjeeling. Then also, as you mentioned, Nepal, it's almost identical, like geographically, maybe even a little higher elevation, but same kind of soil makeup.
You got it. Yeah, so that's like the big macro view of it, if you will. And then you have those two case studies. But I feel like there's so much more to get into there, because something which is really exciting me, or I think is very interesting, is it's how technique is, transmitted, right? Historically, you have a master, right? And you go with the master, and then it's a long master-student. People are learning through YouTube. People are learning through AI how to make tea now. They're going to the border, they're buying these little, machines from China to make tea, and they're just trying it out. They're figuring it out on their own. It's really exciting to see these small growers do that. A new way of learning, I guess.
Yeah, we live in the modern world. I guess it makes sense because like my most popular YouTube video is how to make Chinese incense, handmade Chinese incense. And most of those viewers are from India. Like, because I can see the statistics, like where is this video most popular? And it's just like people, how do I make incense? I want to start making my own incense. They find it on YouTube and they learn how to do it and they can make it. I guess my video satisfies the need. It's just like one video I made down in Chaozhou a long time ago.
Yeah, I think
So that is some really cool takeaways from the trip to India. And it's really fascinating the context you put it in, where it's just like, oh, the Chinese tea market's suffering. What do? We'll do what we did, 90 years ago, and see if we can learn anything from India. You go there and you're like, oh, it's not doing well here either.
Yeah.
Even worse, the nail in the casket of the revolutions, the COVID, and then also just realizing like Nepal can make this tea. So I think another takeaway is maybe look more closely at Nepali teas in the future, because I think that could be potentially the future of the Darjeeling.
That's right. Well, yeah, if you're out there and you see Nepali tea, give it a try. It seems like that's going to be the future. And Darjeeling is going to figure it out. Maybe in the next 20, 30 years, we see the end of the estate system. A few of them become museums, and the rest all become like China. This relationship of independent small growers selling to an independent factory. Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, cool. Thanks for telling us all about your trip to India. I'm happy you were able to do it while it's still fresh.
Yep. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time.
Yeah, and until next time, guys. Derek from One Over Tea, Alex from One Over Tea. Brew happy, guys.